In this video, we're going to talk about performance management. What is it exactly? How and why should HR be playing a role? That's coming up right now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to HR Shop Talk, where you can hear directly from HR experts and leaders. I'm your host, Andrea Adams. I encourage you to subscribe to the show by clicking on the button at the bottom of the screen so you can continue learning from those who have in-depth experience. Today, my guest is Jim Utley. He's the former VP of HR for Tech Resources and is an instructor at Simon Fraser University in their School of Business. We're going to talk about performance management today. Hi, Jim. Thanks for doing this.
Hi, Andrea. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. All right, let's just dive in. So this may sound like a question with a really obvious answer, but why is it important? What can be achieved by good performance management?
It's important because I think it's at the heart of everything we do with regard to people and organizations. It explains to people why their work is important. It provides feedback to people about how they're doing. So it is important in terms of employee motivation. People need feedback, they need recognition in order to continue to contribute to the organization. And so a number of other processes linked to performance and depend on performance management to be effective. For example, you can determine your development needs and training needs. You can determine how to recognize people through compensation. You can determine which people are ready for promotion. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning of the employment relationship, it also helps in terms of determining recruitment needs. As you determine where you might have skill gaps in the organization that you can't meet through internal development, it tells you what you might need to look for in the external market.
Mm-hmm. You said it's at the heart of many, if not most, HR processes. If that's true, why isn't it done better in a lot of organizations?
Yeah, and I talk about this a lot in the course I teach on this subject. It depends on two important prerequisites. It depends on the culture of the organization. Mm-hmm. And it needs organizations that have a focus on performance, but it also requires capable managers, people who are not only see the value of what people can contribute to the organization, but have the skills and abilities to actually work with people effectively, knowing how to set performance expectation, knowing how to explain to people why their jobs are important, creating that what we call a line of sight between an individual's job and the requirements of the organization, but also other things like assessing performance, being very specific about feedback and coaching. All of these skills are absolutely critical for effective performance management.
Okay, so you talk about the important role of managers, and in an organization, they have to buy into the values and into the process. In a big organization, you're talking about a lot of managers. Mm-hmm. How do you go about getting their buy-in and ensuring that they're doing it in an authentic and effective way?
Well, hopefully you're working in an organization where managers are predisposed to those kind of requirements. They already have a value set consistent with what's important to performance management. You know, you won't have a homogeneous culture throughout an organization. You may have parts of the organization quite supportive of the importance of performance management and what that means for the role of managers. You may have some parts of the organization where managers aren't quite supportive or maybe unfamiliar or not capable of carrying out some of the responsibilities that they have related to performance management. The place to start in terms of creating a broad acceptance and commitment is at the top of the organization.
Right.
So with your senior leadership, probably beginning with the chief executive officer and his or her values related to, again, these things around people and the role people play in the organization. It's certainly a lot easier in an organization that has a senior leader or a senior leadership team that not only supports, but is committed, deeply committed to these kind of requirements. Some people say they're supportive. You'll hear yes lots in conversations around, oh yes, performance management is very important.
Yeah.
And then you go and have a look at what's actually happening and kind of see a different picture.
I think that's something we see commonly in HR initiatives is leaders, whether they're the senior leaders or just those that we work with, they say that they're going to support something, but it isn't apparent in what they're doing. This is going a little bit slightly off topic, but do you have any advice on what to do in those situations?
Again, I think the first piece of advice would be not to accept the fact that you're going to see that kind of behavior in organizations. Organizations are inherently political, unfortunately. And so you'll hear, if the senior person, the senior leader is saying this is important, you're likely going to hear all the managers reporting to that senior leader that they're also saying it's important. But I wouldn't take that kind of head nodding as agreement or support. What an HR person needs to do is then work with each of those managers. Some will readily take to this. In fact, my experience has been most managers readily take to this, particularly managers whose own jobs depend clearly on the contribution of people. In some of the staff areas, that there might be sort of a head nodding, but not real commitment to this kind of thing.
Yeah.
In those areas, I think over time, some of those managers will come along, particularly if other managers in the organization are firmly committed to and following through on the behaviors that's required, the support that's required to make performance management effective. Another technique that I've used is we always audited our performance management processes annually. We went and surveyed people, not just managers, but employees, and asked them about how the performance management system was being used in their particular areas. And the data becomes quite clear. And part of my role was working with some of my key staff was summarizing that and feeding that back. So that certainly helped hold people accountable for those kind of requirements. But to say it's easy would be misleading. It's tough. And in fact, I started working in performance management, the last organization I worked in before I became VP. And then for the 14 years I was in that job, every year we spent time trying to further its implementation, further its effectiveness.
Right.
It's a big job, but it's a big job because, as I said, it's central to the management of people.
Okay, so maybe you've answered part of this question already, but how does good performance management happen?
Well, again, I told you about the prerequisites. So let's assume that those are in place. You do have to do some training with people around this, training managers in terms of some of the basic skills required to set performance expectations. I think you want to also teach employees themselves about performance management, about working with their boss and setting these performance expectations, about using implementation plans, setting target goals during the course of the year so they can monitor their own performance. A lot of the assumption is that the only person who can provide feedback is the boss. Actually, you can design the job so that people get feedback directly from the job. That's even more. So, I mean, then in addition to that, when it comes down to the final, assessments and so on, helping managers make those kind of decisions because they impact, again, on, as I was saying before, on other HR processes like compensation and promotions within the organization. So there's a lot of, in addition to prerequisites, there's a lot of additional support that's required to make the system, the overall system, effective.
If you find value in this video, hit the like button. And my question for you is, have you been involved in managing or supporting in a performance management system? What have you learned about making it work? Tell us in the comments section. And back to you, Jim. So how do you do performance management with unionized staff, or do you?
Well, thinking back on the experience I have had in this area, I think the best way to implement performance management in a unionized environment is making sure people understand what's expected of them, making sure they've had the training required to do the job, not just productively, but safely. People need, whether they're unionized, whether they're the front end of the organization or the top of the organization, they need feedback. One is to help them improve, but the other thing is to give them some recognition of a job well done. And it's been demonstrated over and over again, it's highly motivational. So you want to get people really committed to what you're trying to accomplish, which at the end of the day is what human resource management is all about. This feedback piece is absolutely essential. So for unionized people or non-unionized people, to make sure that that's taking place. And again, back to how to make it effective, providing supervisors and team leaders with good training in this area to do that effectively.
Okay, so I'm going to make a sweeping generalization here, but few organizations do performance management well. But if an HR person in one of those companies wants to make a difference, where do you suggest that they could start?
Well, as a wise person once told me, you start where there's a readiness for change in the organization. It may be at the top of the organization. The senior leader may be unsatisfied with the level of performance and contribution throughout the organization, or Alternatively, HR people don't need necessarily get support right from the top of the organization, try to implement this change across the whole organization. They can work in a particular department or function or division, where again, the leader or leaders in those areas may say, hey, we think we can do things better. We need to think about how we can help our people contribute. The worst thing an HR person can do is get out ahead. HR people should not be leading these kind of changes. They should be supporting and facilitating these kind of changes and depend on the support and leadership of the managers and executives in these organizations to actually lead the change. HR has an important role, don't get me wrong. They've got to be involved there and supporting that all the way along, but they have to be careful they don't get out ahead. This is where a lot of HR people fail and have a great idea, but they haven't done the homework in terms of identifying where they've got support and what they need to do to build that support.
There were some great words of wisdom in all of that. Final question, though. You are an instructor at SFU. So if someone wanted to know more about performance management, can you point them in a direction or two?
Yeah, I am a big proponent of Peter Drucker's work.
Okay.
Albeit Peter's is gone from this world. And his book that I reference a lot in not just performance management course, the other course I teach is called Management. Reading that book carefully, even though it was written years ago, it's prescient in the sense that how he could see what was required, not just in business and organizational structures of that day, but what's required now. So he talks a lot about performance, about contribution, about how to motivate employees through feedback and recognition. Aubrey Daniels' book, Performance Management, Edwards Deming work, and his book, Out of Crisis. It's not a well-written book, but it's got, again, some, I think, first principles with regard to managing people in organizations.
Okay. I will put a link to those in the description of this episode. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jim. So performance management can be powerful, and you might be interested in an episode on labor relations, even if performance management is challenging to do with unionized staff. That episode is coming, and I'll put a link in the description when it's ready. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.